Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Chimera's Tree of Trust. I'm your host, Patrick, here with my awesome guest, JT Tomlinson of Reptichip International. How you doing today, JT?
A little bit of technical difficulties, but I think you sorted it out, right?
Yeah, so at the very last minute, the webcam decided to stop working. That was exciting. It survived 10 minutes of pre-show and then shit the bed. So that was super exciting. I really appreciated Troy coming in swinging, asking if things weren't going to work out. But it's good. Maybe I was just trying to bring a little bit of the late to the mic vibe, right? I don't know. Who knows? Oh my God, JT, how's your week been?
It's been good. It's been busy. It's always just like weeks, months, years. They all run together now.
Wow, that's mildly depressing. Just you hit that point in life where you're like, everything is just one long stream.
I'm just waiting for the day.
What day is that?
The day of reckoning,
Oh no. Wow.
I'm waiting for the white light.
Wow, things got dark really fast. Happy Halloween, I think, maybe.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Troy, thank you. JT, do you feel like you're slumming right now? Be honest.
Definitely.
Yeah, a little bit. All right. So everyone, JT had a purpose. He did not want to just come on to have small chat. He wanted y'all to learn something tonight. I think that's good. So we're going to try and be moderately professional here and stay moderately on track because we have a rundown and we're going to follow this rundown unlike that other podcast we do, which we never know what's going to happen there. So, JT, why do we have you here tonight?
Why do we have me here?
Yeah, why are you here?
So you were like begging for a guest and like 3 dropped out. So you were like, dude, you got to do me a solid. I was surprised. Like Caleb dropped out. You were like, dude, I got to have somebody. Will you please? And I was like, I'll fill in for him. It's kind of an honor.
You should be honored. I mean, that's mostly true, right? Mostly true.
Pretty much. You're just scraping the bottom of the barrel now.
I didn't really have any other choices. Troy said no. Chase said no. Andre said no.
The go-tos, man.
I know. It's tough. It's tough, but it's the way it goes. So, anyway, it seems like the market has been the hot topic lately in the industry. And I feel like we had a lot of individuals pre-COVID that thought that they were going to become huge breeders and start producing hundreds of clutches and absolutely crush the universe. And I think there's quite a few people that are learning that dream may not be a reality. Is that fair to say at this point?
I think it could be for them, but you go back to like we were talking about earlier is just like if you're going to treat whether it's breeding ball pythons or breeding dogs or owning a substrate company or whatever it is, if you're going to treat it like a business, like a legitimate business, then I think you got a shot. It's going to be it's going to be a struggle to kind of get there based off of COVID pricing and, free government money and the promises of scrupulous breeders and all that kind of stuff that I think can dissuade a lot of people whose hearts probably aren't in it for the right reasons.
Sure. Yeah, man, I think there's also this thought, right? Especially I feel like in the ball python world where you can jump right in, spend a little bit of money, and then next year make a crap ton of money, and then the year after that make even more, and you're a millionaire within 2 years, right?
We were talking about that earlier as well as, well, here's the thing, right? In most businesses, if you get an ROI in 3 to 5 to 6 years, right? Like that is a solid investment.
Yeah.
In the ball python world, we're pissed if we don't make our money back in a year. It's not realistic. It's not sustainable, and it's just not good business either. So if you think about it from that point of view, like you buy that $15,000 male or whatever it is, right? And you're still making money back in 2 years and you're pissed off because it took you too long. I mean, that's just, that's not realistic and that's not sustainable.
Yeah, and I don't think I mean, obviously, like I think the male is a good example, but it's really any investment at this point in your business, right? Like you go and buy the high end female or the high end male or whatever. You may not ideally you want to see a return fast, right? Like that's the perfect world. But just because it takes a little bit of time to get there doesn't mean it's a failure. Like you said, 3 to 5, even as much as 6 years is pretty standard in what I'm going to call the real world, right? Right outside of the reptile world, a return on your investment. And so I think we get spoiled sometimes as snake breeders. And I think that especially for maybe some of the smaller guys, they go and they make this big expense, behind this crazy male or whatever. And then they only have 3 or 4 females they put it to, and maybe they don't realize that there's no guarantee that those, even 2 of those females are going to go that year. And so you may only get 1 clutch from that male. And so you may not actually get a return on that. And it's not necessarily a fault on the market as much as just poor planning or not, poor expectation management on your side, right?
Yeah. Idealistic thinking. With any business, you need to go in with a good understanding of what you're getting into and what's realistic and what's attainable but challenging and what's probably your best bet, like right on par with expectation management. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot of unrealistic expectations in the business. Um,
Do
and
you,
there's also a lot of like basic business fundamentals that probably aren't adhered to because we just have this ideal of breeding the animals posted on Morph Market, which is that is one venue for selling your animals, right? That
yeah.
like back in the day, this is cyclical. The whole market is cyclical. So same thing happened back in the day of $20,000 pieds or $50,000 pieds,
Yeah.
and posted on King Snake, and everybody would make their money. Well, that's just an ad. That's an ad agency. That's a marketplace. That's not a business, right? There's so much back end that you have to build for a business.
But I don't think a lot of people separate those two real well or disassociate those two real well. Like we'll just use the Morph Market example, right? You can have a Morph Market store, but that's not your business. At most, it's the front end for your business.
Hopefully it's just one front end, but that's a sales venue for your business.
Right.
One, hopefully of many,
Right. So I think where we can kind of start is at what point when you started doing this, and you did snakes for a long time before you delve into Reptichip, but just on the snake side, when do you consider it to go from like hobby to small business, right?
When is that point?
Yeah. When do you think, like, what would you consider? You like look at somebody and you're like, all right, this doesn't feel like a hobby anymore. This feels more like a business with that person.
When you're all in, you quit your day job, right?
Is that it? That's the only moment? Oh,
that's it. Well, that's the moment. Like, so you get to this point, and this is what I would encourage everyone. If this is what you know that you want to do, there's nothing that's going to stop you from doing it. A down market's not going to stop you. Troubles aren't going to stop you. You're going to find a way to do it if you truly want it, right? Like, and so when you're like, I'm all in, I'm not saying go quit your day job tomorrow because this is what you think you want to do, but there is a point that comes, the pawner, the point of no return.
yeah.
You burn the boats, right? Like you've sailed, you're at your destination. You're like, I'm not going back.
Yeah.
I burned the boats and I'm here. I'm doing this regardless of ups and downs or whatever, right? That's the point. That's the point you need to be to.
So, so you don't think it can be considered a business before that? Question mark?
It can definitely be a business, but it's a hobby business, right? Because you're not devoting all your effort to it. If you're devoting all your effort to it, right? Like if you're 100%, if you're all in, right? Now, I know like you're probably asking from a standpoint of Patrick, where I've got I've got a day job, and everybody has that and day jobs, but
no, I get what you're
also
saying.
been doing it for over a decade now.
Yeah, no, I think actually, so let's talk about that specifically though, right? So you've essentially, I think in your mind, it seems there's kind of three stages in this. You have the hobby, right? You have what we'll call the hobby business, and then we have like the true like breeder business, right?
Right.
So that hobby business, I think, is where probably a lot of people float back and forth within, right? There's a lot of people. I don't know of a lot of people, honestly, that do this full time as their full time gig, um, for a myriad of reasons. So I do think a lot of people float in that realm of in between.
Nothing
What
wrong with that. Nothing wrong.
No, no, not at all.
Sustainable. But let me just throw this out there. A business, is there to make money, right? So
Yeah,
hobby businesses typically you make money, and that money is probably your salary, right?
yeah,
Okay, so when you're saying hey, I sold $500,000 in snakes. I made $500,000 this year. No, you didn't. You didn't make $500,000 this year. You had $400,000 of expenses and
right.
paid yourself maybe $100,000. So is that a business? Yeah. Is that sustainable? Yeah, but you're just self-employed, right? You're self-employed business, and absolutely nothing wrong with that. But let's make some distinctions between some of the bigger businesses that are out there that can employ one, that can employ 20, that can employ 100, but
Right.
they're doing things like business investments. They're doing things like they're not paying themselves. They have a buttload of money that they're saving up to act on different things. Like, treat it like a real business, right?
Right. So when you started that transition into the real business portion, leaving the hobby business, like what were some things that you kind of did preemptively or during the process to help prepare you for that moment?
Are we talking about or moving into Reptichip or
Well, I mean, we still stay in the snake realm for a little bit. I mean, I know Reptichip is Reptichip is a whole nother beast in itself because it's not so much a living animal
it's a
business as a goods,
oh, it's
right?
an animal. It's an animal.
It's an animal. It's a
Um,
beast.
it is a beast. So when I got serious about snakes, I quit my day job.
Yeah.
I was working overseas on contract and quit my day job 100% to pursue snakes and having to learn about business, right? Like, it's not, hey, I'm just breeding a bunch of snakes. I'm trial by fire. I'm having to learn how to balance books and do taxes and what's customer service and like return emails and all that stuff that you kind of are like, oh shit, this is actually work.
Yeah. So if you had somebody that say is doing 15, 20 clutches a year right there, it's a decent number of clutches for somebody that's doing this as a hobby. And they're like, "Hey JT, I think I really want to turn this into a full-time gig over the next 3 to 5 years." Like, what are some basic things that you would be like, "Oh man, let me tell you, I struggled with this and I wish I had done this before I started moving into this."
I definitely take a look at your bottom line, right? Like, how much what are your expenses? And the biggest expense that you're going to have as a new breeder trying to cut your teeth in this business is, what do you have to reinvest?
Yeah.
Like I said, I mean, you could gross $1 million, but if you have to reinvest 900 to stay relevant, then
Yeah.
you only got $100,000 to play with, and that's not very much when it comes to regular everyday living and expenses.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. A lot of people don't appreciate the amount of money it takes to really make money, especially in like the reptile world, right? Like it's not cheap to play. Like it's a very low barrier of entry if you're just coming in and buying like, a few animals here and there and $10,000 and now I have a business. And I know $10,000 can sound like a it is a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money like in the business world.
It's all relative, right? Like,
Right,
originally,
exactly.
when you first start off in like this business is a great example. So when you first start off, you buy your pet store snake or whatever, you get your interest up,
Yeah.
You know, you decide, hey, look, it'd be cool. I could breed them. I mean, I'm gonna make some money and doing stuff that I already love. And
Right.
yeah, because it's an hour of your time every week, right? But you make your first $1,000 at a show or whatever, you're like, oh, I could do this, right? And you realize how quickly that goes. And you're like, well, crap, I got to stay relevant. And now I'm selling $3,000 animals. And I'm like, yeah, but then I need to get up to that next level, right? Like, so it really doesn't,
Yeah.
it's never ending. And in business, like the money that you'll talk about year after year after year, it just gets bigger and bigger. It's just part of the business, part of growing your business. And
Yeah. I mean, it all kind of scales. And I think sometimes
skills, exactly.
I think sometimes we don't appreciate that scale, and we don't appreciate how to actually acclimate to the scale, right? Because there's this weird inflection point, right, where you may have a really good year where you're like, oh, I did X amount of number in sales and I've got all this money to blow, and then you go and you blow it, and then the next year things are a little tight and you're like, uh-oh, I need some of that money back. And of course you can't, right? Because you've already reinvested it or whatever else.
I mean,
So I
there's
think,
things like ranching and cattle and
yeah.
farming. I mean, like the good years you're saving for the bad years. The bad years,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think aside from just like the investment side of it too, I think there's a lot of back end stuff that people don't appreciate. I shouldn't say appreciate, they just don't think about, I think, a lot. So like inventory management. Okay. So Andre and I, we're doing about 100 clutches a year now, which is a good chunk of animals. One of the things we didn't fully appreciate when we got there was you have to have a very efficient way to manage not just the inventory itself, but also manage the inventory as far as sales go, and then the customers go, invoicing, keeping track of the finances for all of that stuff, right?
Logging,
Yeah,
databases,
right. And it's fortunately,
management,
what's that?
like CRM, right?
Yeah,
Like you are starting to track your customers and reaching out. Hey, I know you wanted that.
yeah.
Go ahead.
It, and so it's fortunately I'm fairly versed in the coding world, and I was able to write a lot of scripts and stuff to help us automate that stuff, but it's a lot of work, and I don't think people appreciate that necessarily. And like, I'm not saying you can't run a business without that. I'm saying it gets difficult to run it without that, right?
At scale, right?
Yeah. And so when you start scaling, it's little things like that. And so like that's something I've told people in the past is like, if your goal really is to scale up and start doing more than 50 clutches, 60 clutches a year, start looking at the details, the record keeping. How are you keeping track of everything? How are you managing your supplies, right? Like water dishes and shipping containers and shipping boxes. What do you do to make sure that you don't run out? Because also, if we looking professional is an important aspect of this, and there's very few things that are less professional than having to email a customer and say, hey, yeah, I ran out of boxes, so I can't ship this week. Like, that's embarrassing.
Bags and you're throwing it in a sock. Yeah.
Oh my God, could you imagine? I mean,
Right.
I know it happens, but could you imagine?
Yeah. So I think like, and then when you're talking about scale, it's not only scale of the animals that you're breeding, like the quantities, right? You can
Yeah,
scale in all types of different ways. It doesn't mean that you have to scale into just sheer quantity.
right.
Animals, there's a lot of ways to scale your business. And then there's also a lot of ways to identify where you are in the market cycle of things or even in the economy and say, okay, hey, look, maybe these next couple years aren't the ones to be like kicking out. I can make 100 clutches, but do I need to be maybe I concentrate on my top 30 or 40%, right? Some of those that I'm not going to pair, I might, let go, or I might strategically hold on to them, get them big, get them ready, because that time will come back, right?
Yeah,
There's a lot of ways to do things.
I'm constantly torn on the whole to breed or not to breed. I know a lot of people are like, oh, if I don't have the right male, I just won't pair the female. And
Mhm.
that way she's ready for next year. I have not found that just because a female doesn't go 1 year means she'll definitely go the next. And so I've
True.
always, yeah, I've always been of the like, if I have a female that I can pair, I pair her because I'm
Yeah.
not guaranteed a clutch ever again.
Yeah.
Now, the way that we combat the issue you're talking about, right? Of like, if you don't have the optimal male, like we make sure like we invest most of our money in our males so that even
Yeah.
if it's a lower end male, quote unquote, it's still a good male that's going to produce good viable offspring that are going to be good for the market itself. We try not to make, wholesale fodder and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It happens. I mean, we all have byproduct and all that, but no, I think it's fair. I mean, a lot of this comes down to business strategy too, right? And like actually strategizing and making some real plans and looking past just this year, right? Looking 3 years down the road and being like, okay,
Which is
yeah,
every business, right?
should be, yeah, should be. I mean, forecasting is an important part of every business, and I
It should
find
be, right? And I
it
think
should
that's
be.
kind of some of our message today is, if we treat what you want to build a business out of breeding reptiles or ball pythons or whatever it is, and then you actually treat it like a real business.
Yeah.
How many times, I'll just give you, for instance, stuff that I see all the time in the quote unquote regular business world is, have you ever done like a competitor analysis? Like what makes your competition good or bad, or what are your
Oh
strengths
yeah.
and weaknesses? What are your, so like that doesn't happen a lot outside of that dude's charging $3,000 when he should be charging $5,000 because I got the same, right? Like that's your competitive, and that's not a competitive analysis of
Yeah.
people that are taking your customers, right?
Yeah, man. It's
Basics that we can apply in the ball python world that we haven't even scratched the surface on, because I hate to say it, but 95% of ball python businesses are, not at that level, right?
I
I'm
think
not saying that to denigrate it.
no. I think it's important to talk about though because I remember years ago, I feel like it was maybe on bullshit. I can't remember now, but you made the comment like if somebody asked you what the most valuable thing they could do to start a ball python business was, and you're like, take your first $500 and go take business school classes.
Go to your community college and figure out how to do the basics.
Right. And I think there's a lot to that because I think a lot of people come in and even if they have great vision for the projects, they don't have any idea how to run a proper business. And then, within a few years they're drowning essentially. And they're not understanding what really went wrong. And it's like, well, you didn't really have, a foothold to begin with. You came in, you were sold a dream and you jumped right in. And so I think attempting to learn what's going on and learning some basic business practices can go a really long way, right?
Yeah.
When I ask people like, what are the pain points in the industry that you fix? Like people stare at you and they're like, I don't know. When, yeah, right. Or even like you talked about, like, okay, let's do a competitor analysis. Let's go look at our closest competition. Let's see what they're doing. Let's see what they do well. Let's see what they do poorly, and how can we fill that niche in the market? And so often the answer is, oh, well, they just sell it for cheaper,
Yeah, no,
or they
always the
just,
answer, right? Is like
yeah,
you only compete on price. Well, if you only compete on price, then it's always going to be a race to the bottom, right? Like
yeah,
I buy from certain people because I have developed a relationship over a long period of time. They've done right by me. They've helped me in many other ways. And these will always be people that if they have an animal that I want, I'm paying full price. And I'm saying, even before I'm telling them I'm buying their animal, I'm like transferring them money. And then I'm calling them. I'm like, hey, send me that. Money is already in your account. Right. That's the kind
right,
of relationship that you want with your customers. And
yeah,
the last thing that you're worried about, I'm not saying always, but the last thing you're worried about is price, right? Like that's one component of the big
oh
scale, right?
man, that I think that is how do I word this? You're right. Price doesn't always matter. It should not always matter. If it's the right animal for the
Right.
project, especially a male,
Right.
if it's the right male for you and you have the right
Especially,
animals to
yeah,
put it to, it it's hard. It is very hard to overpay for an animal.
It's value, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it's the value to you, the value to somebody like an animal that you're buying for $20,000 might be worth two to me, uh,
Right.
vice versa. You know,
There were countless times before Andre and I merged that like we would be talking about a snake and either he was about to buy one or I was about to buy one and both of us would get that scrunchy look like why? And then you'd be like, well, I have this animal and this animal and this animal and this animal. And he's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense then. Or, vice versa, right? I'd be like, oh, yeah, no, that's a good fit for you. And that's a good point that you're making where it's like sometimes what may be crazy valuable in one person's collection is absolutely useless in another person's collection, right? And so I think that also goes back to the self-evaluation and the strategy and the strategic planning for the future, and really evaluating your collection and evaluating what animals you have, and looking 5, even 10 years down the road and saying, okay, these are the animals I have. Where do I want to go, and what animals do I use to get there, right?
yep.
So, yeah, I think some of that stuff is just it's not common sense. I know that. It's learned stuff through years of experience or classes or whatever else. But man, I do feel like the industry as a whole would be so much better off if we had more of that. Um, and it's not particularly exclusive to just ball pythons. I mean, there's many people outside the ball python industry that deal with these same problems. Small businesses continually or constantly have a lack of business sense, and that's just because.
Well, you know what I've noticed, like the successful players in this business are a lot like the successful players in most businesses, is that they love what they're doing and they're very talented and they're also good at it and they have experience under their belt. But one of the biggest things is that they also have a passion for business, right? So like
Yeah.
they like business, they like doing business, they like building businesses and creating things. Like that is probably a key to being successful in whatever. It doesn't matter how much you love ball pythons. If you want to be a ball python breeder, you have to know how to successfully run a business, or at least run a business.
Yeah.
And the ball pythons could make you successful, but you're going to have to have basics, right? You're going to have some
Yeah.
basics under your thumb.
Oh, for sure. I We've talked about it before, right? Like once you start really becoming a business, like I would challenge a lot of people, track your hours. Look how many hours it actually takes you to do stuff. I think people vastly underestimate how many hours they spend doing
That's a
things.
great point. Like, your hey, I made $100,000 this year. Really boils down really quick. I mean, you might have had it in that great salary, but you're still making $20 an hour, right?
Best case scenario.
Maybe you're loving every minute of it. So
Yeah,
nothing wrong
I
with that.
no, not even a little bit, but it's like, you know, go back to Andre and I, we both work 30 to 40 hours a week on our business with Chimera. And, we make okay money, but that's 70 to 80 hours a week for 100 clutches, give or take. Now, we could probably optimize that a bit, but it's still, it's a significant investment in time and effort. And so like if you just have one person trying to do that, right? Like imagine that. Oh my God. Like
Well,
that's just
you're so, but it took you a long time to get to that point.
yeah.
Like, so those 30 hours that you're spending now, 40 hours, like you could be doing 80 hours and like, you'd be solely focused on
Yeah.
just business and it would grow exponentially. But in order to be doing 30 and 40 hours a week and be running a successful business that's, still making money, still keeping up, still
Right.
being relevant, all that, you had to put in a tremendous amount of money and you weren't spending 30 hours a week initially when you were building this business. You were doubling that while working a day job and learning everything and shorting up like where's your rat supply coming from? Where do I
Yeah.
have redundancies that like there is a lot of time and effort and ass pain that you put in to get to where you are now to be able to spend 30 hours a week to be successful at your business.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. And that 30, 40, it's probably more like an average, right? Because there's definitely weeks, right, where you unintentionally spend.
Season, you're
Yeah. Yeah, you just never leave.
you got 10 clutches hatching at the same time. That's
Right.
gonna be a long night, right?
Right. You never leave. Or, we're trying to optimize something on the back end and I'm on the computer till 3 in the morning coding or whatever, right? So like I think that's another part too, is like the job when you own your own business, the job never really ends,
No.
right? Because even if I'm not at the hatchling house or the breeder facility, like I'm at home and I'm thinking about the business.
Yeah.
My pastime is I do a lot of coding for fun. I do a lot of the social media prep, and we do this podcast and we do Late to the Mic with Troy and Chase, because like it all helps, get visibility for the business, but it's also stuff we're passionate about and we enjoy. And
Yeah.
so I think that's an important aspect too, is like if you don't, like you said earlier, if you don't really enjoy having a business or the grind that it takes to have a business, you're going to struggle. Um, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be harder than it would be for somebody else. So,
I think that's that's the thing, though, right? Like I think a wise man said one time, the master is the one that doesn't understand the difference between his work or his play. They're the same, right? They're the same.
yeah,
And I think if you're happy with what you're doing, it doesn't matter if it's work, right? There's some
yeah,
days that you're just dragging, like you got your ass kicked, but you know what? Overall, you're pretty happy. You're content. You're like, hey, this is me. This is what I should be doing. This is my purpose, right? Like to build things. It doesn't necessarily have to even be this business, but this is what I'm going to see through,
yeah,
and it's working. And then you start gaining like steam on that, right? You start getting the ball rolling, because bigger ball, because you start leveraging all of these different things, and then you're on to the next thing.
yeah. I will say, ideally, that's what happens, right? And I think this is also an important point to make: is just because you start a small business doesn't mean it's going to work out, right?
No,
There's a large portion that unfortunately just doesn't happen, and sometimes it doesn't matter how hard you work; it's just not going to work out. And I think that's where some self realization and inner soul looking comes into play, and you say to yourself like, okay, things aren't necessarily working out right now. Why is that? Is that, a fault that I could do more or I could do better, or just this isn't going to work out and I need to move on, even though I've invested this time and effort? It doesn't mean you need to invest more time and effort.
or it
Um,
tweaks into something similar, right? It's a
yes.
journey for you, right?
Yeah. And when I say like this isn't going to work out, I'm not saying like, so I think some people dive in and they're like, I'm going to have a business doing this, and they invest time and they invest effort, and a year or two, three goes by and they're like, I'm drowning. This isn't gonna I can't keep doing this. It's just not successful. And it's like, okay, let's step back and let's say, let's not do it as a hobby, or let's not do it as a business. Let's not try and produce 40 or 50 or 30 clutches a year. Let's simmer it down to like 10 and treat this like a real hobby. Have fun, a hobby that can absolutely make income for you,
Yeah.
and see if that brings you more enjoyment. Because if the answer is yes, that's actually the way to go. And that may be just better in general for you. And I think,
Well, you might find easily, like this can easily turn into it's no longer a labor of love, right? Like so,
oh man,
everybody has
yeah.
ups and downs and stuff. If you're in this, like you're gonna have your downs, you're gonna want to get out, but you know what? Like at the end of the day, you can't live without doing this thing. So you know it's right for you. You know
It
that's right for you.
it's it's funny. I've had friends who ask that. They're like, if you didn't have snakes in your world, in your life, what would you do? I was like, I have no idea at this point. Like I can't see my life not in this industry. Um yeah, it would be weird. Uh, so I think you're spot on with that, man. Like it
Well,
would.
yeah, ask yourself hey, you won the Mega Millions, right? Like, what are you going to do the next day, right? That
Oh,
answer will tell you a lot of different things, right?
I can tell you exactly, because my wife and I had this conversation. So I buy Canova. Justin will say yes because I have $1 billion. I then buy Russus reptiles. And then
do you want all that? Wow.
I do want all of that. And then I hire my friends in the industry to come work with me on our snake compound in Virginia on a 1,000-acre ranch that I want to buy. That's it. That's it, man.
That's the dream.
That's and I would like to buy one Porsche. That is it. Just one.
Porsche.
Yeah, I just want one Porsche so that I can make my granddad proud. And so I think that's it, man. Sorry. And I would have a useless farm for my wife. And what I mean by useless farm is it's a farm full of animals that aren't good for farming. So
like a goat, an emu.
Like emus, like tiny cows, like all tiny animals, like potbelly pigs that I can't do anything with, ducks that I would never be allowed to, eat, like all that stuff. Like my wife wants all of that. So no, but and it's funny you say that, but that is like
that. I mean, that'll tell you, right? Right there.
That's it, right? That tells you you're where you're supposed to be.
I thought about it. And I was like, I'm gonna go buy an island, right? Like I'm gonna go buy an island. It's gonna be mine. Nobody else is coming. Just me. Gonna build out everything I want over there. And then I was thinking, I was like, yep. After about 3 or 4 weeks, I'd be back here doing the same stuff because I'm like, the fuck am I gonna do it on an island all by myself, right?
That's it. I know exactly.
I enjoy the hell out of it for don't get me wrong.
Right, for 3 weeks, but after that, right? JT, he told me he would start selling Cypress to put you out of business. Troy, I wasn't going to bring that part up.
Cypress.
Yeah.
Good luck. 60 years to grow a cypress tree. So that doesn't seem like a good business.
I'm just going to forest them all. I'm just going to harvest them all. It's fine. The environment be damned. Oh my God. Yeah, man. It makes me, when we started doing the consulting stuff, I started interacting a lot more on a very personal level with individuals, about their collections and their thoughts. And sometimes I'm like, man, you really sometimes you just want to be like, man, that was really dumb. Because it's like, you'll have those people that they were warned, right? And they still ignored you. You're like, man, that's kind of dumb. But then you have the people who you feel like they did come in with the right intentions. They were just misled or whatever happened. And then they're in over their head. And that's kind of when I go back to like,
I have a feeling like you're talking like I'm right here.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Yeah.
Because you came out, you helped me out a lot. It was a couple of years after the fire. I had a bunch of odds and ends. I still do a little bit, but like, you actually flew out, helped me go through everything, and get me a plan to get back on track. Chase helped me out too. Chase flew out.
Yeah.
He helped me with some husbandry stuff and some ideas, and you kind of came in and solidified. Just kind of give me a direction because I was just kind of like lost in a lot of different. It was hard to get everything back mentally. And
but I think some of that too was like when we say getting back on track, some of it was just getting focused, right? And being like, man, you got some fat to trim, and we can do a lot with what's there. We just we're wasting a lot of time, resources on stuff that really is never going to work out for you. And I was actually, talking with someone today about that. And it's like, I struggle a little bit in like giving the advice of like, oh, you should go lean, because like, that's the opposite of what Andre and I are doing right now. We're taking this opportunity to feast. We have space. We're growing the business.
Now, if you were in a position to do it,
right. We're feasting, but we also love what we're doing.
Do the Warren Buffett thing, right?
Right. We have time for it. We have space for it. If you're in a position where you don't love what's going on, you're burned out, you're struggling, and I do not advise expanding at all, and that's where I think the argument of going lean, a little bit more lean, you just run into a little bit more risk that way, when you're lean, right? And so let's call lean like 15, 20 clutches, right?
Mm-hmm.
That realistically means you probably have 30 to 40 breeder females, maybe 50, and you're just not super optimized. So with 30 or 40 breeder females, you could have a season where you only produce 10 clutches. Like that's a very real possibility.
That's realistic.
Yeah. And when you only produce 10 clutches, like unless those are some absolute bangers,
right,
that income for that year could be rough. And so if you're counting on it.
Well, I think about it like this, right? Like as an industry, ball pythons in particular, we should all be lean. And by that, I mean, we should not be trying to recreate, right? Recreate what we already have, right? We should be trying to create things, and a lot of new things. And the byproducts are the animals that we already have. So it used to be, hey, we're going to try, like, we had a pied. We're just going to produce a lot of pieds because pieds are whatever, $20,000, right?
Yeah.
That's the reason why, like, Justin took off and stood out. Like he was one of the first people to really grasp, like to take hold of those combos and run with it. Like everybody else, they just want to recreate stuff because that's what's selling right then, right? Not the chance to get a double head albino pied later, right? Like, but he would take that and run. And now you see where he is because he does that. It would help out a lot of things if we did breedings based on creating new things, right?
Yeah.
Because creating the same old stuff. Look, if we're creating mostly inchy, whatever, orange dreams, right?
Yeah.
Like, look, there's plenty of those, and there's plenty of those in the pet market. And guess what? They're all female, and they're all triple head something. So don't try to recreate it, right? Like there's absolutely no reason to breed for that, right? Because that's where the big breeders are offloading their stuff onto the pet industry, and they're going to have all the genes in it. Why are we trying to recreate that stuff? Because it should be an offshoot of your breeding program reaching for the coolest combo that you can make, not, hey, I just paired something to pair something because.
Yeah. I think that goes back to the really thinking about your pairings and really thinking about the animals that you have, right? This goes, and I feel like I'm just beating the drum, but I really want people to like get this. When Andre and I went through JT's collection and really like the biggest thing we told him to buy, dump serious money into your males. They're going to go the furthest. That's where the most value. And so what that does too, is it makes it so that, if you have this really, really high-end, powerful $10,000, $20,000 male, even if you throw that to a female that's $1,000, your offspring probably are still going to be pretty cool and fairly unique. So you can still squeeze value out of those animals.
And that's why I got the itchy orange dream double triple het male.
That makes sense. You're right. Yeah. JT went all in and got himself an orange dream inchy het ultra hypopod, and I was just
that's smart. So yeah.
That's smart. I was so proud of him. I
tested for it. You believe it? Crazy. Yeah.
He's like, you said get a better male, Patrick, and I bought a better male, and I was like, well, you did. Turns out
there's a lot of methodology to what you guys are doing, and I used to ask you. I remember asking you and Andre at a show one time. I was playing. I was just playing kind of devil's advocate. I was like, hey, if you had this female, what would you put to it? And you gave me some interesting interesting answers. And the bottom line was, it was almost like we're just talking about like genetic diversity, like what is going to give you, like, I was like, if you had a triple, this is back in the day when there's not a lot of triple visuals, you had a triple visual female and you had a triple het male, but that's all you had for it. You're going to put that to it. And you gave me some really good feedback on that stuff. And it's part tactical and part strategic. And I thought that I just like the way that you guys had a very well thought through approach to you're thinking 5 years down the line. You're not thinking what's going to sell this year.
I mean, I think that, and I've given Andre credit for this before. In the very beginning, I was surrounded by people that were very anti that thought process, and you show me your friends, I'll tell you how successful you're going to be. And I think that early on, I didn't do the best job, and so like even though I remember I was going to buy a Sunset when they were still $30,000, and I'd been saving up money for 2 years. Like this was going to be. I was waiting for them to hit $18,000. Like that was this number I'd saved up grad school money. I hadn't eaten lunch at school literally for like a year and a half, saving up money so I could buy this animal, right? It was everything. And I remember telling a breeder that I was around at the time, I was like, yeah, I'm going to get it. And I'm going to pair it to a clown. I'm going to pair it to my pieds. I'm going to pair it to my ultra, like literally basically just throwing it into recessives, right? And I remember him telling me that's the dumbest thing you could possibly do. You have to make more like Sunsets so you can get your money back. Because it was that old school mentality, right?
Yeah.
And of course, hindsight, right? You're like, God, if I had done that in 2016, can you imagine?
Yeah. I remember listening to a popular podcast back in the day, and they were like, I don't know why you're pairing your double male to different double females. And I was like, are they serious? Are they just trying to drive?
Yeah.
Like, are they trying to stall like competition? What's going on here? Because that's progress.
That is, but I think at that time period it wasn't looked at progress. And I'll say that was when Andre and I first met, and we had it's so funny now. He had a mahogany pied male. And I was like, hey, if you decide not to sell it, because he was going to sell it, I was like, I'll just buy a bunch of het pied females, and we can just run him through them and just make a bunch of mahogany pieds and sell them, and we'll make a lot of money. Right. And he was like, that doesn't sound very exciting. And I was like, that doesn't sound exciting. That's an interesting way to think about it. And that really actually was one of the big shifts for me, was like, oh, so earlier when I thought about making these, doubles and triples, that was actually not a terrible idea, like I had been told. And that really shifted a lot. And I think to your point, right, it's something not enough people, I think we don't look down the road. We don't plan down the road on our projects. We just make in the immediate what we think will make a lot of money. And in reality, you may not make a lot of money this year, but 3 years down the road, you're going to absolutely crush it. Use Justin as the example, right? He, 2014, 2015, I mean, people knew who he was, but like the everyday breeder had no idea. I remember telling people that I bought stuff from Justin in 2014, and they're like, who's that? And then all of a sudden, 16, 17 comes along, and this dude up in Georgia who'd been hoarding octuple recessives, it's the scene, right? Yeah. And we realize, oh, we get it now.
I think I hit Justin up. I don't want to date myself, but like probably 2013 or 2012. I'll have to look it up in the email. And I was like, hey, I really want to make it in this business. Really interested.
Yeah.
Got a bunch of animals. I was like, I need a mentor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I was like, will you be it? And back then, of course, he was like, he had time, he had a lot more time back.
He had time to interact with the normals.
He's like, man, I'm here to help. And he actually, to his credit, he actually did help me out a lot. But
wow, that's cool.
Just think about doing that now with a guy like you would just like. That's why it's funny, right? You laugh. You're like, you take like the big guy, and you're like, hey, can I have a little bit of time? Doesn't really work.
Yeah, I love it. It's actually that's cool. Actually, real fast, Leviathan just came here. I'm going to say this on every podcast I am on until December 1st. Their new documentary, 15 Minutes, is coming out December 1st. It's a ball python documentary. I cannot explain how bitter and angry and jealous I am that I am not in it, even though Courtney clearly said I was going to be in it. It looks incredible. The tidbits are just spectacular. This guys, it's like a professional did this stuff, and I cannot wait to see it. If you're not following Leviathan, go follow them. Go look at the tidbits. You'll notice I'm not in there. Please let them know how upset you are about that. That is all.
They know you have more than 15 minutes of fame. That's why.
It doesn't matter. I'm so upset, but I love it. I'm so happy for them because it really does look incredible. But my level of bitterness is spectacularly high. Oh my god. Anyway, yeah, man, I don't know. There's a lot. There's a lot to like. It's hard to really unpack like what makes a business successful, right? All right. So as we gently transition to Reptichip in the last 10 15 minutes here,
It's a segue.
yeah, this is a really gentle segue. You obviously started with snakes. You now have Reptichip. What do you think are some of the similarities between the two companies that allowed you to be successful with both companies? Because I'd argue you've been fairly successful at both sides.
That's a good question, because at the end of the day, they should operate very similarly, but I had to learn a lot about day-to-day business stuff that I just still didn't know in
Yeah.
dealing with ball pythons. Just some of the same things now we're talking like international logistics and
Yeah.
inventory systems. And,
But I do think that you kind of shrug it off. I didn't appreciate how important international trade was in the ball python world until I had a lot of snakes to sell.
Yeah. I mean, we that's kind of the same thing we alluded to earlier, right? Like, hey,
Yeah.
morph market, it's great marketplace, but it is not the marketplace. There is many places to sell your animals, and many markets that aren't even open to animals. Look at the stuff that Miguel's doing down in Mexico and even like Central America and stuff. I just got off the phone with a breeder in Dubai who's bringing in Reptichip out there. Like Hong Kong's open. When mainland China opens, maybe if it opens.
So I was told that China is either about to open or has opened.
Well, it's I think there's
still
a lot of trade restrictions, but in order to get around trade restrictions, there's a lot of sales, and I'm not saying animal sales, but I'm just saying in the reptile industry, there's a lot of sales to Hong Kong, which probably make its way to China.
I do think if China formally opens up for like ball python specifically, guys, you thought COVID was good.
Yeah.
We're gonna have like 4 years of greatness, and then like all of a sudden everything's gonna be $15 and it'll just be imported back. But it's gonna be great for like 4 years.
And if you saw that some of that stuff that Justin was doing out in Thailand, it's just there. We want to just talk about what was me, how bad the U.S. market is here, and markets are depressed internationally right now, but like there are places that love. The thing that kills me is when you start selling animals back to Africa, right? Like,
isn't that great? Oh, dude, I love that.
South Africa. I mean, there's stuff going back to Ghana and stuff.
Yes.
That's what blows my mind, right? Is like, I'm like, come on, you know this is serious shit when we import it and then export it back to the country we took it from. So there's just I guess not getting fixated around one sales platform is probably the bottom line there.
Yeah, I think so we're doing some A/B testing right now. For those who don't know, and I don't mean to talk down, but just an A/B testing basically is trying one thing and then trying another thing and comparing the difference. And so one of the big things that I really started advocating for and pushing for was actually like a true advertising budget where we spend a set amount each month and we try and get customers outside of just morph market and other stuff, right?
you use for that? You use
So we've been exclusively using Instagram right now. And the reason is it was easy to start with. What's that?
don't you also use Google Ads too, or no?
Not yet, not yet. So we started with just Instagram because it was easy to do. Like it's very easy entry. Um, and basically we were measuring clicks and sales, right? And just trying to quantify if it's worth it and like what differences we see. And so like now we're going into the next phase where we test a different volume and all that other stuff. And I think stuff like that is super important to do if you're trying to actually get sales.
Definitely,
Because,
right?
well, I think a lot of people think, well, once I list a snake on Morph Market, my job is done. And while that
No,
was true during COVID, um,
right.
that, that that's about as passive a form of sales as you can do.
We throw this out there too. Is like when if you're still redirecting everybody now, if you're using Morph Market, that's great if you don't have a website. But if you're redirecting, like using ads and then going right to Morph Market, you are sending them to your store. However, it's a store
Yeah.
at all, right? So like,
So that's the conversation Andre and I've had with other people, and it's like right now we are sending them to our Morph Market store.
yeah.
I am fully aware. I'm fully aware that they are 2 clicks away from any one of my competitors, and I get that.
If you have the snake that they want, they're getting it.
Most likely, right?
Testing comes in too, is figuring out what's bringing people in.
Yeah, so I mean that's part of it too. And so I can, just for information for folks. So we've been A/B testing 2 different ads and just trying to see like what people respond to better. Um and this is going to be audience specific too. I do need to add that caveat. The people that follow you, they get your tone, they get your humor, they get you whatever, and you do develop this following that has a certain personality to it, right? And so I am not surprised that when I look at my serious ad versus my funny ad, I'm not surprised that my audience really prefers the funny ad. Like my serious ad gets significantly
that you're talking about.
right. It's kind of dumb, but it's funny.
But that's your killer, huh?
Crushes it.
Really?
20, yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you all metrics on it. So it has been running for the past well, for this go around, so the past 30 days, I've gotten 251,000 reach, 8,200 content interactions. I've gotten 206 or 2,666 direct clicks on my Morph Market store, and it's costing me between 27 and 32 cents a click. So that means I'm paying 27 cents to 32 cents per person that clicks on my Morph Market store. If you start doing some math, you can realize like it only takes 1 or 2 snake sales to actually cover that cost, right?
That's fantastic.
Right. You can't argue with that. So that's the funny ad. My serious ad, hold on, it's loading, in the same time frame has gotten 692 clicks and is costing about 65 cents a click. So about half the level of engagement. Which is okay. Like that's why we do this testing. We try and figure stuff out. But I think that's important stuff that we can also do. How does one get into international markets? I have found that they find us more often than not, but also networking goes a really long way. So there are breeders that post their stuff on Instagram, Facebook, other sites. If you see them and know that they're in other countries, hit them up and just start chatting. Most of our international deals have come because of networking almost exclusively.
If you go to a Daytona or a Tinley as well, and you hear somebody with an accent, like that's always a good bet too, just to start talking to them. Because those are real, right? That's real friendships and real relationships. And some of those guys, like you just start chatting, and next thing you know, you guys are in a deal.
100%, right? And sometimes
like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, and you don't even do it on purpose.
No, or sitting eating Chinese food and making a deal with the unnamed partner. So
yeah,
You were
Yeah.
asking, I'm sorry. Go ahead, man.
No, you're good. Go.
You were asking about Reptichip, and so
Oh,
we had started with doing Facebook ads. Is how we really launched
okay.
Reptichip. Same type of deal, and that was pretty good for us to us for a while. And then we kind of, just due to not having a lot of time for social media, we just kind of, I just don't have a lot of time for it. So uh, we may be hiring for that. So if anybody out there is interested, is a
uh,
social
I,
media manager, I'll throw that out
I,
there.
I love that. That's good.
But just to give you an idea while you were running through this, I thought it might interest people, or maybe not. Tell me to shut up if it doesn't. But to go from early, we were spending maybe $100 a month on Facebook ads or something, and I thought it was successful enough for us to keep doing it. Then we hired an ad manager where they were spending our money. We've been through a couple of those, and I would just recommend doing it yourself, like learning it yourself. You're going to get a lot bigger bang for the buck, because we've definitely given a lot of people money that we shouldn't have, and it was a great lesson, right? That was all earned money. I just brought up Amazon ads, for instance. So this is just on the Amazon platform. For September, we cut back, and this is just Reptichip, just the basic Reptichip substrates. In September, we cut back ad spend. Going into Q4, we start throttling back because it's more expensive for us.
Yeah.
We spent $33,000, a little over $33,000 in the month of September. So that's about $1,000 a day on ads. But like, you're not doing that, right? You're not starting off like that.
No.
You start building small and small, like I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Snowball. And obviously we wouldn't keep doing that if it wasn't advantageous. But just to give you an idea of actually having a marketing budget, like everybody should have that, even if it's $10 a month, because you're going to start, just like I learned the hard way, but I've learned it, spending a little bit of money and losing it really quick, and then figuring out, okay, how do I get to be effective with that? Like you're talking about your ad campaigns, it sounds like, man, your cost, like some of my cost per click here are like $3, right?
And we, for whatever reason, the few ads that we really have run, they've done fairly well on the cost per click, right? Because you're right. Like when I was looking at the metrics, because originally when we started this, I wasn't sure what a good price was, right? Because you don't get to set the price with Instagram. You just tell them how much you want to spend.
Yeah.
And so, things I was reading, they were like $1 or even $1.50 per click is okay. Like they're like, that's fine, because you just do the math and you base it off your product. And so, that's something else though, I think is really important, is if you're going to do some form of advertising, whether it's Instagram, Google, Facebook, whatever it is, you can't just throw the money to the wind. You do actually need to look at the analytics and make sure that you're getting the bang for your buck, because you can just set money on fire quite efficiently.
I've done it so many times. Yeah.
I mean, as someone who has unfortunately done it, it can happen.
It's the cost. If you're not learning, I'm the guy that learns the hard way every fucking time, right?
Yeah.
Like I'll learn it by doing everything and then finally doing it and be, that was easy. Why didn't I do that in the first place? Right. Like, so I'm that guy, and I have to learn that. That's why they say, like, there's smart rangers and there's strong rangers. I was always a strong ranger, right? Like, 'cause I had to learn, like, I wasn't smart, so I had to learn the hard way. So, but like, I think it's part of your cost. Some of that is just the cost of getting your education and what you're doing, right? You're going to lose money. But it's the people that stop and like they don't figure out why it went wrong. They just like, oh man, I just burned through it. Well, that's the cost of doing business. You gotta put that money in there, right?
Yeah.
Like that's your education. Otherwise, go get a doctorate. See how that does you.
You'll end up breeding snakes.
Yeah, right. You're still gonna be cleaning up snake shit.
Yeah, it turns out. Yeah, man, and also like, you know, when you're doing like for advertising specifically, like it's okay to dump a lot of money in and then dump $0 in the next month to see if it actually made a difference, right? That goes back to some of the A/B testing. Even just doing nothing for a month, as long as you're looking at your analytics, is still valuable information, right?
Mhm.
And so I think that too, like if you get discouraged because you felt like, oh, I dumped a lot of money into advertising, it didn't get me anywhere. Okay. So go ahead and now spend that next month really looking over the analytics for this new month and determine, did you just feel like it didn't get you anywhere or did it really not get you anywhere? And so you can still even glean value if you feel like you missed the boat or messed up.
The
Um
way I feel about it is this: if you just said, and I believe you, that you're making money off of it, that it's worthwhile for you, and you
yeah.
can figure it out. The way I look at it is, I can figure it out, so I'm going to keep trying it because I know it works, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it doesn't work for me for months. Maybe I just burn, but I'm going to figure out that solution,
Yeah.
right? If it's working, there's probably a reason. If it's working for somebody, there's probably a reason why they're doing it.
Right. And also I'll also say this because I do feel like sometimes, maybe I harp too much on like the money aspect of like it's expensive to do this stuff. Advertising doesn't have to just be like Instagram ads. Advertising can also be posting significantly on Instagram. It can be doing Instagram lives. It can be doing Facebook advertising. It can be doing YouTube videos. It can be doing podcasts. There are a lot of avenues that you can advertise your company without spending cash equity, right? It's your time capital that you're spending at that point. But if you don't want to spend real money, you can spend your time and be very successful that way. There are a surprising amount of small breeders that have really big followings, and I'm like, they have how many followers? And it's entirely because they put effort and time into their social media side.
That's such a
And
good point, right? Like I try to tell my guys, like at work, like I don't have time to give you an attaboy and stuff. I'll give you bonus, right? Like
yeah,
that's my way of providing value because I can't do anything. I don't have the time for that other shit, right? Like so, a small breeder, that's a great advantage for a small breeder that would have over quote unquote a bigger breeder, right?
yeah,
The fact that they have time, they can put time equity into a lot of different things that maybe somebody that's more occupied in the day to
yeah.
day can't.
Well, I mean, just and I don't want to completely speak for Justin on this, but like if you just kind of look at like the social media in general, right? It's a lot more summer now. And part of that is he had to hire someone to help because the business grew so big and you just need help at that size, right? So it's like you talk about like a smaller breeder is just going to have more time to do stuff like that and dedicate to that. And that's a huge advantage that you have. Um and so I think not enough people take advantage of that. I try to stay on top of social media. I struggle with it. And so that's where we do run advertising to help supplement some of that. We part of the reason we started doing the podcast, right? It was because I hated doing just formal YouTube videos. And so the podcasts, they help and I enjoy it a lot more. I get to come and hang out with people like you and I get to do stuff with Troy and Chase. And it's a lot more fun. And I think people receive it better from me on that stance than doing like the more traditional stuff like Justin does with his YouTube videos. And so I think finding your strengths too is a very important aspect of all of this.
Speaking of Troy, it looks like he's been hitting. He's just over there beating us up the whole time.
Oh my God. Okay. Let's see here real fast. Troy, JT, me, I guess that means Troy, Chase, Patrick, marry one, have a baby with one, live with one, go.
Well, I'm obviously having a baby with Chase.
He's the prettiest. It's not even a question. Yeah.
I mean, He probably knew that before he typed it out. He should have anyway.
He did. But
can I kill one of you guys?
No. You don't get to kill us. You have to have a baby with us and marry us.
I don't know. Chase would also be a good dad. So
do you want
to can I do all with Chase? I'm just gonna. Sorry.
It's just all Chase.
Yeah,
that makes sense. That's fair.
You guys can marry each other.
Yeah, it's fair. Leviathan, no, you're dead to me. I will not give you any ideas. I'm just kidding. Yes, we can talk. I love it. Wow, Patrick and I have been afterthoughts since birth. We're in. True. I like it. It's good.
Patrick and I.
I'm not bitter. All right, guys. I promised JT I wouldn't keep him on too long. Hopefully this was moderately coherent and y'all got some good stuff from it. I think if I were to summarize like what I think is important to be like successful in this, know what your goal is, what you want to do, be self-aware, have a plan, and then don't be afraid to fail. And if things really, really are going poorly, it's okay to step back and treat it as a hobby and not have to have a business. Is that fair?
Good advice.
Yeah. You have any other words of wisdom, JT?
You nailed it, man.
All right, brother. Everyone, thank you so much for being here. JT, thank you for giving me some time.
Pleasure being here.
And hold on, we have one more question. If I wanted to do ball pythons full time, what would be the best route to get there?
Rewind an hour and minutes. And,
yeah, rewind and listen, and then go from there. But yeah, seriously, JT.
The next slide will tell you.
Yeah. Wait for the next one when JT and I do this again, because it will happen. Seriously, thank you for coming on. Thank you for putting up with me for a little bit. And guys, if you aren't using Reptichip, you're doing it wrong. Go to his website. Also, if you buy a snake from either Canova or Chimera, you get a special discount code in your package. So buy snakes from us and good things will happen. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, and we'll see you next week. I think Ben from RGI is coming on to talk snake genetics. Maybe some news about Desert Ghost that's riling some people up. Super excited. But yeah, with that being said, thank you all again. Farewell. JT, if you'll stick around for a second, I'm going to click the outro, and then we can finish this bad boy up.